So everybody's talking about interest rates. You're hearing this everywhere, all the time. What's going on with rates? Rates are going up like crazy. But it's not just how you think of the rate. Some people have to move. They don't have a choice. And then there's also the fact of how the rate affects the seller. So it's not just the buyer, it's both. So we're actually going to talk about both of those things here.
All right, so today we're going to talk about the fact that there's so many people out there that have an interest rate that's maybe as low as 2.75 all the way up to about maybe 3 or 4, and maybe they want to move, but right now the rates are between 6 and 7. And so we're finding that a lot of those people are just confused on what to do. And of course, they don't want to move up in payment. And if they were going to move up to a bigger house, they're already going to have a higher payment, and you stack the interest rate on top of that. Like, when does this make sense? Like, who is an ideal fit for this, making this transition during this time?
So to me, the ideal candidate for this, or what I'm seeing out there in the market right now, the number one type of person that's doing this is somebody that has a job transfer specifically. So if I'm thinking of somebody that's coming into the area, for our area specifically, military, huge candidate for this. And reason being, the housing on base is very, very limited here. So they don't have anywhere to go. And rent here is really expensive. The only other option really is to buy. So even though rates are higher, and they may have had a lower rate where they were posted before, they still need to buy here. And even though rates are at nearly 7 at the moment, we're still seeing a lot of military buyers here.
Well, let's give it some context. So if you are that person, how much extra is it going to cost when you're making that move? Let's say the interest rate was the same. That person who owns the home, and it was going to be 3%, and now they're moving up to the 6%. How much money are we talking about here?
Right around $500,000. Typically, the difference in price is going to be right around $1,000, maybe even a little bit more.
Yeah, it's crazy. I mean, the thing is the reason why the market is a little bit stalled out for that audience is just because most people can't even hack that.
You're going from $2,800 to $3,800, $3,900 a month.
Yeah.
Big difference.
It's a literal deal breaker for them. And there's solutions for it, there's ways kind of around it a little bit on a temporary basis that we'll talk about later in the video. But yeah, I mean, you can see what the issue is here. So let's talk about what are the other people that fit into this box. When does it make sense to make this trade of interest rate?
Yeah, I think another type of client is somebody that's going through a huge transition in their life, something like a death or divorce or even a marriage, or maybe they're having another baby and they're like, oh my gosh, my house is just too tiny. There's no way we can fit another kid in this place. They absolutely just have to make the move and bite the bullet and do it anyways. And in that case, a lot of times there's enough equity in the home that they're in, so they're buying and selling. As they sell their home, there's if there's enough equity there, it kind of offsets the difference in cost. So depending on the whole big picture, it might not change their payment as much as just you would think going straight across.
All right, so another thing I can tell you that does come up for some people is they just get sick and tired of their current situation. And what I mean by that is something's causing them enough pain to where they will make the move financially. So an example of that could be somebody who changed jobs locally, and I've seen this happen, and now all of a sudden they're commuting from Olympia to Seattle every day. And they're sitting there and they've been doing it for weeks, months, and they're just flat out done with it. They reach that breaking point where they're like, no more. I don't care if my house payment is going to be higher. And I think what they think is, and what they know is that there's a strong chance that even if the payment goes up, that they may be able to refinance that in the future. So people always say that, what is it? Marry the house, date the rate.
That cheesy saying.
Yeah, but I mean, there's some truth to it, right? It's that person isn't stuck always with that loan forever. They have committed to the house for the time that they're going to own it, but it doesn't mean that they don't always have options to refinance the rate if the market changes and when it changes.
So one thing that people don't think about when they're thinking about interest rates, everybody thinks about it from the point of the buyer, especially like the first-time buyer. Oh, this affects first-time buyers so much because they can't afford to buy a house. But what I'm seeing just as much affected is the seller, because the buyer demand is affected by the interest rate, especially when it gets over 6. Up into the 6.5, now towards 7 at this moment. It's really starting to affect how many buyers are out there in the market. So the sellers are starting to see buyer demand slow me down.
Me personally, I've had a few people race to get on market. What's happening is we've been able to sell those homes pretty fast and for good terms. So whereas 3 months ago, that wasn't the case, right? Everybody's kind of thinking the same things, but the market literally can turn that fast. There's so many variables. You have to be having somebody look out for you that really understands the market.
So if you're one of those people that's in between, kind of starting to research whether or not it makes sense for you to either jump out of that 3% rate and go into a 7 if that's where you're at, or if you're making a military move or a job transitional move, or there's just no way for you not to move right now, we've created some helpful tools for you that can actually help go in depth and give you some more information.
People are always confused what are the things I could do to my house to make it sell for more money? What are the things I should know, and what are the questions I should ask the real estate agent that I'm going to interview, right? So if you need any of that information, we have free reports on all of that. Just comment below and we'll make sure to get that information to you.